Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're doing another Drinking and Thinking. I know we took a couple of weeks off, but man, it's been busy around here. But we're back at it today, so you've got 9 seconds to get your drink of choice, and I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, today we're talking about quality control. What is it? Why is it important? And what does it mean to you? All right, guys, quality control. It comes in different levels whenever we talk about the knife industry. First off, we have full custom knives. Like this one right here was made by Ray 8 or 9 years ago for me. And it is an absolutely beautiful knife. Ray took the time to make sure all of everything was just perfect. And that's what you get out of a custom knife. You get a beautiful knife that, if the maker cares, is going to be perfect. And Ray obviously cared. Now, do be careful with that. You want to do some looking around, reading up on your various makers, because you do want to get one that cares. Because a custom knife like this, very expensive, and you want to make sure that you get a good one. You don't want to throw out several $100s and get something from a maker who's overbooked himself, stressed out, and is cutting corners. You want to get one from a maker who's doing things right and knows what he's doing. And from our full-on custom one-off knife, we go to something more like this. And this one really is kind of a full custom, but it's representative of the M1 series from Millet. And what you're going to have here is a knife where a small number of people touch the knife. And they're going to be checking everything because they want this knife to go out and be as perfect as possible, because they're not making that many of them. So just one that goes out bad is bad for them. And because they care. So the very small batch custom is another place where, are you assured to get a perfect knife? Well, not every time, but you're most likely going to get a perfect knife. And that was Nixie. Nixie and Chloe over there are fussing over a bone. But, and now Browse Blades is another one that's like that. They're a very small company. They do farm out some of their CNC work, from what I understand. Jason, if I'm wrong there, correct me. But whenever they go to assembly and checking things, doing the quality control, there's only about 3 of them. So they take great care in making sure you get a good knife. And I know there were some problems in the beginning, but every Browse that I have bought over the past year has been perfect. You know, I really love this VR71. Anyhow, once we leave that area, we get into production knives. And before we pick any of them up, let's talk a little bit about how quality assurance and quality control works in the production environment. And this is just from my experience. I have not been in any of these factories. I haven't looked into or been a part of any of their quality control. It's just from my past experience. So their system may work a little bit different. But this is what you generally see in a quality control setup. You have a list of specs, and they have a tolerance with them. And that list of specs goes to the quality assurance or QA team, and those people pull a knife from near the end or at the end of the line ever so often, ever so many knives, and they do all sorts of testing, measurements, weights, HRC. They may even do some destructive testing. They do all kinds of stuff to make sure that the knife is coming out right. And as the knife goes down the line, most of the time your line workers are tasked with making sure that whatever parts happened before them, whatever part, if they were doing assembly, or whatever parts they made, or somewhere in the line, they have to or are supposed to be checking fit and finish of the parts. Now, they're not out there with micrometers generally, checking every little detail, but they are checking with jigs and they are checking visually to make sure that things are working right. And that's how you come up with stuff like Spyderco's knives. I mean, they make knives all around the world, and these knives are almost always great. From their bird line all the way up to the most expensive Spyderco's, they are all pretty dadgum good, especially for the money you spend. And that's what they do. They have a quality control or quality assurance department that is doing that, and they have checks on the line as it's going through. And you come out with a great knife. And whenever those QA people, if they check a batch of knives or check number whatever knife, they may pull a whole batch and check a whole batch of knives if they find something wrong. And that's how you end up with great quality control for the production environment. And we know some other companies have that. Ganzo does a pretty good job. They have some hardware issues, but their knives are generally pretty dadgum good, especially for the amount of money you're spending. And then there are other companies. And you remember we talked about tolerances. Tolerances are kind of a big deal. In fact, they're a huge deal. Whenever you make a knife, say this Kershaw dividend, and you're Kershaw and you make it in your U.S. factory with your own people, you control those tolerances completely. And you set up your quality control team to measure for a specific tolerance, a few thousandths, whatever it is, and make sure that the knives are coming out right. Then you decide, well, I need to mass produce some knives at a lot less money. Okay, so in today's world, that means we're probably going to China, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. We've seen some great knives out of China. You've got you've got Kaiser, you've got Riate, and Stedman, and there's probably some brands I'm missing, but those things are great. They got great quality control from those companies, and even from Ganzo. But whenever you contract knives to be built somewhere else, anytime, even if you use a subcontractor in the United States or Canada or Europe, you have to do some dealing. And a lot of times it's on those tolerances, because the machinery that this contractor may have may not be as good as yours. They may not have the preventative maintenance system on their machines that you have in your U.S. machines or your European machines, or that we does with their machines, or Kaiser does with theirs. And those machines need to be checked on a periodic basis, so many hours, so many weeks, whatever their schedule is, to make sure that they are in great working order. And if they have any variations, they need to be checked. And the knife companies that are doing a good job are doing that. They have a maintenance staff that's coming in, knows those machines forward and backwards, and keeps them all in great running order so that they maintain tolerances. So you contract this stuff out, and it's always a fight whenever you do a subcontract. The subcontractor says, well, your tolerances here are pretty tight. Why don't we loosen them up this much? And you say, well, I don't want them that far. I want them back here. And they say, well, how about here? And you know how the negotiation goes. And you end up quite often with wider tolerances than you may have liked to get the knife produced for the cost that you were looking for. And that is the trap, the hole, if you will, that CRKT, Kershaw, Smith & Wesson, Gerber, you name it, there's a long list of companies have fallen into. And we've looked at it, and I've fussed about it here on the channel. The past couple of years with Kershaw were awful. Just straight up awful. If it wasn't made in the U.S., most of them were either junk or not far from being junk. CRKT, same way. And I don't even mess with stuff that's branded by somebody else that doesn't even make knives. So we come around to 2017. And as you saw yesterday, we've got some Kershaws that are really, really great. So what's happened? What changed? Well, my guess is that Kershaw had a whole lot of returns. And I talked yesterday about how the return thing kind of works. And they had to do something. So they gave these companies a little more money to get tighter tolerances. And it is paying huge dividends. Because, and CRKT must have done the same thing. Because every 2017 model that I've looked at from both companies, now they may have their little issues, but the tolerances are good, the blades center, the actions work, the locks lock up the way they're supposed to. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It makes me feel great that they're not ignoring the budget consumer anymore, because, you know, they make some really, really cool designs. This Flourish, I mean, that's one cool knife. Check that thing out. And the budget consumer, in my opinion, is very, very, very important. You know, I deal with a lot of people on a daily basis that don't carry a $300 knife or a $1,000 knife. They carry a $30 knife. Is there anything wrong with that? No. But if you're CRKT, if you're Kershaw or Spyderco with your Delicas or your Chinese line, your bird knives, your hope is that somebody will buy your $30 knife and they'll like it. And whenever they go to buy another knife, that they'll move up the scale and they'll buy that $300 knife. You know, that's the idea. The old game of they're all junk till you get to $60 doesn't work very well. Most people, if you just send them junk, they're going to find whatever $30 knife isn't junk, and a lot of people I know carry one of these around, or one of the 501 or the 503, the two smaller ones. Why? Because they're cheap and they're not junk. They work. Buck's quality control on the 110, 501, and 503 is pretty dang good. But it's a beautiful thing what I'm seeing so far this year in 2017. Quality control has come back to the budget knife community. I would like to say that I had something to do with it with all the ranting and raving and fussing I did last year, but like I said, it was probably the return rates and this company right here. Ganzo has put the screws to Kershaw, CRKT, and it's a kind of a beautiful thing, because even though Ganzo has some issues of their own that I'd like to see them clear up, bottom line is they make a very pretty knife out of some pretty darn good steel, and almost every one of them, not everyone, but almost every one of them I've seen has worked right out of the box and worked pretty decent, especially over the last half of last year and into this year. They have been making some very good knives, especially at the price point. I don't think you can beat a Ganzo at that $15 to $25 price point. However, whenever you step up to $30, I want you to look what Kershaw's giving you. You know, this Flourish has got all those design points. And look at that blade. That blade is friggin' cool. The Flitch, same thing. Step up to around $30 and you get out of that cookie cutter Ganzo thing and you get into some nice design. And you're getting build quality to go along with it this year. So anyhow, guys, I hope that helped you understand how quality control and quality assurance work. It's really something that has to be done, and if you're not doing it, if you're a knife company that's not doing it right, you end up with junk. And we've seen a lot of junk. But this year, so far, even this $10 little pub from Kershaw, man, it's just amazing. It's a solid freaking knife. I'm amazed this year, guys. Quality control has come back, and it's a beautiful thing. If you got any questions about quality control, I'll do what I can to answer those, and there's some of the guys that follow the channel that'll know a lot more than I do. Roy, if you're out there watching, I know you know a heck of a lot more about QA and QC than I do. So anyhow, ask your questions, and either myself or somebody else will hopefully be able to answer them. But that is kind of a rough overview of how quality control works. And quality control is what gets you great knives, especially in the production end. And this year, we've got it. They have matched one of our quality control budget champions, Ontario Knife Company. Every one of these Kershaws match it. Now, this old CRKT doesn't. It's got some issues that I planned on showing but didn't. But anyhow, guys, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a few minutes and having a drink of choice. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.